Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going through step by step and giving you guys a guide on how you can start flipping phones or start reselling phones to turn a profit and ultimately start generating a new source of revenue, or potentially even start doing this full time. Now, this is going to be a fairly long video since I am going to be going through essentially the depth of everything I know in this business. This is something that I've been, doing for a long time on my own. And so I really don't want this to be a scripted video or, a scripted course per se, but instead I just want to kind of go through, hit on a few points and try to share as much information as I know, and kind of going right into it. A little bit of an introduction of who I am, or at least my experience in this market. I essentially started reselling phones or flipping phones, I would say about 7 or 8 years ago, and at that point I had actually gotten into it sort of as a way for me to go ahead and be able to be the kid that had the newest phone, or just essentially be able to own a phone without having to pay as much money as my friends were paying for it, because I wasn't able to afford paying at the time. New iPhones were $600 or $700. I couldn't afford it or justify paying that much for a phone, and that was really the reason I initially got into phone flipping. And eventually I started kind of going through and learning this is a pretty profitable thing to get into. Essentially everyone has a cell phone almost, and so it's very easy to then ultimately find out that this is something that you can easily source and ultimately easily resell as well. And now there's a lot of gripes and things that go into a lot of that, which we're going to touch on a little later. But ultimately, the cell phone market is a very massive market, and it can be very lucrative as long as you know what you're doing. And the other side of that, or at least the dark side of the business, is that it can be, very dangerous business, and, a business where it's very easy to lose money or, get into different types, of trouble, be it maybe if, someone wants to, physically harm you, if you potentially are going to, be getting robbed, because a lot of times you are meeting people that either have a cell phone or have cash to be buying your cell phone, and that type of thing. And either situations like that, or there can be possible ramifications with the law, if you don't properly go through all the steps to protect yourself and shield yourself from any liability. And so really what I want to kind of discuss in this course is going through all of those various different things, and ultimately give you guys the knowledge that I gained on my own just through experience. And so kind of essentially moving forward to what phone flipping really is, and kind of boiling it down. If you've clicked on this video, I assume have a very good idea of what phone flipping is. And if you don't, that's okay as well. It's a very simple business model where really you are purchasing a cell phone, and this can really be applied to a lot of different items. You can apply to smartwatches. You can apply it to laptops, tablets, a lot of electronic items, and a lot of items in general. It's just a few of the things might not specifically apply in that case, but a lot of the principles are the same, where essentially you are buying or sourcing a device, usually from a private party, and you're going to be doing it at a lower price and then ultimately selling it for a higher price. And there are a few different strategies you can go ahead and employ to be able to do that, but essentially it's a very, very simple business model. You just want to buy a phone and essentially be able to try to resell it for a little bit more. And so that's essentially kind of the business model. Now, I guess kind of going right into how you would be able to start a business like this. The very first thing that a lot of people are very kind of hesitant about or unsure about is the budget that's needed to start, reselling phones or flipping phones. I know, like I had even mentioned in the beginning, even such a long time ago, phone prices were very expensive, and even now, it can be very expensive to, buy specific phones, right? If you're buying an iPhone 13 Pro Max, which at the time of this recording is Apple's flagship phone right now, you are you're easily into the very high three figures, maybe around $800 or $900, and maybe even going into $1,000. And it's very hard, and that's on a single device. So it's very important to kind of look through the budget that you have and work within your budget. Now, the very, very good thing about phone flipping or phone reselling is that there doesn't need to be a strict budget for you to start. You just really need to have something that you've established and work within that budget. And the reason is because there are things that you're going to be able to buy within that specific budget. Even if you're starting with a very low amount of money, you can always, buy a cell phone, for example, that you're buying for parts, and then, just sell parts off of the phone. And that's something, where you can start off with a very low amount of money, $20, $30, right? And going kind of a little bit higher into the more practical sense of maybe if you're starting with a couple $100, which is what I would personally suggest, starting out with between $300 to $500, and kind of starting in that budget, and that way you have a little bit of money to go ahead and put into a little bit of the ancillary things within the business, which I'm going to go ahead and be talking about as well as we move along into this. So things like IMEI checks, things like if you're shipping out the phone, fronting the shipping cost, things of that nature. So I would say $300 to $500 is roughly a good place to start. And again, when you're starting with that budget, you aren't, out there buying iPhone 13 Pros. You're not out there buying, S21 Ultras. Really, you want to work within your budget. And, let's say you're starting out with about $300 to $500. I think the sweet spot of where to start off with is, phones that are around the iPhone 8 price range right now. And, it's going to be hard to say, based on when you're watching this video, what the value of, particular devices are. But I would say, you want to keep the, you want to buy essentially units at around, I would say $100 to $150 when you're working within that budget. And you want to essentially try to make, I would say, about 15 to 20% profit at the end of the day. And I think that's kind of a good, healthy place to start, where you're going to be able to source a lot of volume easily. And while you might not be making a couple $100 at a time, it's a way for you to kind of get your feet wet. The other thing is, when you're dealing within that price range, and especially when you're starting out, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to buy phones that are eventually going to end up being blacklisted. Like, there are going to be times where you're going to be in situations that you don't want to be in, and ultimately you're going to chalk those up to losses for the cost of doing business. And personally, when I'm in situations like that, I like to chalk that up to the cost of me learning. Like, for example, if you go to university to learn something, you're going to be paying for, I would say, $40,000, $50,000 a year in tuition. And living expenses to go ahead and learn everything to get your degree. And here, let's say you have a deal that went sour and you're out a few $100, right? That's the same thing, right? It's the cost that you paid to learn the specific issue that happened, and ultimately kind of grow based off of that, and not make that mistake in the future. And when you're learning, when you learn by doing, you're able to learn a lot faster, I personally think. So I think that, when you're working within that lower price range, getting essentially, buying a phone that you lose money on, it's a lot harder to do when you're dealing in that lower price range, and ultimately the losses that you're going to endure are going to be a lot lower. So I think it's a very healthy place to start out around there, and not focus on making too much money at first, but instead focus on your volume. So that's kind of what I want to mention for how to start in regards to like budgeting. The other thing that I want to mention is kind of different prerequisites that you want to take when you are first starting your business. And a lot of these things are going to vary on the specific area you're in. Different laws, different states can have different laws, different countries can have different laws on, how they view these type of activities. I'd say, when, usually if you're especially younger and, you're starting to do this, maybe as like a side hustle type thing, I would say, just kind of start this almost as a sole proprietorship where you can either register a business name or you can either not. But essentially, you can just start buying and selling phones and ultimately, keep track of how much money you make on each phone because you are going to be need to reporting it for taxes. And so you can either go that route and not really work on registering any type of business entity. Now let's say this is something that you want to really go into full time and you want to go into full steam. I would then suggest looking into registering some type of entity, be it an LLC, and that way you can start going ahead and writing off different expenses that you're going to endure. And like I mentioned before, there ultimately aren't that many expenditures within the business, but there are going to be specific expenses that you might want to start writing off. Even gas for driving between different deals and stuff that you're making. You want to be able to have the ability to write that off. And so and then the other thing is it starts limiting your liability since the business is a separate entity, and it does give you an extra layer of legal shielding in a sense. Should there be any legal issues that arise. So having an LLC can definitely benefit you in that way as well. So that's kind of going through and talking a little bit about I would say the business structuring aspects of it, and so really I don't want to be giving you legal advice, and I'm certainly not giving you legal advice in this, and this is something that you definitely want to do your own research on. There's tons of other YouTube videos discussing differences between going into business, working as a sole proprietor versus an LLC versus a corporation, and ultimately I would say that's something that you want to do research on based off of where specifically you are located and the legalities of that situation. So let's say we have a budget established and we have your business established. Let's say you want to just proceed as a sole proprietor. You don't want to worry too much about setting up the business just yet. This is something that you want to do on the side on the weekends, maybe one or two phones a week type deal. That's certainly you can something that you can start with. And so kind of getting to the meat and potatoes of this actual video is going to be discussing specifically how you want to secure deals on phones. So how to find phones, and then ultimately how to negotiate, how to inspect, as well as how to appraise phones. And that actually can bring me up to why we've been sitting on this webpage for so long. eBay.com. eBay is a very famous e-commerce platform. It's relatively easy to get started selling on as well as started buying on, and there is a lot of buyer protection, which is why I really prefer eBay mainly as a buyer instead of a seller. Now, while I do have eBay pulled up, there are some distinct advantages and disadvantages, and personally I would say for me at least the disadvantages heavily outweigh the advantages of buying on eBay. But there are some advantages that we'll kind of go into. So now when you're buying on eBay, you can essentially source cell phones from all over the world, and even all over the United States. Maybe let's say you want to buy some, if you're located in the US and you want to buy domestically within the US, or if you're located within Canada and you want to buy domestically within Canada, you can sort through that and essentially search nationwide, or I guess across the whole world, and be able to source phones with that. The other distinct benefit to buying on eBay is that eBay does offer a buyer protection program. So, let's say you buy something that you were not disclosed, or something that wasn't described properly in the listing. You can definitely go ahead and make your case to eBay. Even if the seller is not accepting returns on the particular item, you can make a case to eBay and work through getting the item returned, or work through getting a partial refund. Whatever amicable resolution you want to reach. eBay can definitely help out with that, and that's really a very big benefit to buying on eBay. Now, going into some of the cons, the biggest con for me is the pricing, essentially. Now, while I mentioned this as being a very big pro, where you essentially can buy items that are for sale nationwide and people will ship them to you, or buy items that are worldwide and people will ship them to you. The other important thing to think about, or the other side of that situation, is that you're also dealing with buyers that are within the same geographical area. So you're dealing with nationwide buyers, or you're dealing with international buyers, essentially, and that essentially means that prices will be higher, because there are ultimately more people that are seeing these listings, and more people that are willing to buy these phones. So sellers can ultimately command a higher price, since they know that since so many people are looking at the phone, it's easier for them to get the higher price that they want. And if in someone's market a specific device is worth more than it is in your market, they can comfortably go ahead and pay more for that phone, and still turn a profit. Whereas you buying that phone, you might end up taking a loss on it, and you essentially won't be able to find kind of find anything like that. Now, one other benefit that I did want to mention for eBay is kind of going back through with talking about the buyer protection. It's also, eBay is a relatively safe platform in terms of you don't have to physically go out and meet people, and there's always that risk of it turning into an unsafe situation where someone decides that they want to rob you, type situation. And that's something that I've heard very often in the realm of phone reselling. And I'm going to kind of go into in a couple minutes different techniques that you want to, or different safe practices that you want to definitely look through. But that is, again, one big benefit, that you can essentially in the comfort of your own home search as often as you want. Let's say you're stuck at school, even you can still go ahead and just be on eBay, refreshing, seeing what deals pop up. You don't have to essentially get out and go physically find deals, or go physically meet up with people to secure deals. So let's kind of just going a little specifically into even different things, or different search tactics. I'll kind of go ahead and show you guys. Let's say you want to, I know an iPhone 8 is a big example of what we've been mentioning, so you can just search up an iPhone 8. And obviously there are a plethora of phones, and you're going to see everything that is way overpriced. Essentially, what I like to do myself is I like to go with the first thing, usually what I'll do is, when I'm searching, is go to auction, go to ending soonest, and that way I can just kind of see stuff that's just about to end. One thing I like about eBay on auctions is you can just kind of hop in at the last moment and you snipe stuff for fairly good prices. So let's say you're looking at this iPhone 8. When it gets down to 10-15 seconds, just go throw in your max offer and hope for the best type deal. That's usually you're able to maybe secure devices for cheaper than if you were going through and buying it now. Now with buy it now, again, you can see prices are traditionally higher, and these are prices that you can go ahead and buy the phone for right away. And you can always sort by different conditions as well. When you're essentially looking on eBay, and you can definitely go ahead and play around with it, and really ultimately tailor down to a specific phone that you're looking for. Be it factory unlocked, if you're looking for specific carriers, that type of thing. You can really find the specific phone you're looking for relatively easily. It's just mainly an issue of pricing. Now, one very useful tool and one very helpful tool I like on eBay when I'm buying as well as when I'm selling, and we're going to talk about selling a bit later in the video, is the feature down here of completed items as well as sold items. So let's go ahead and just click completed items for fun. And completed items, you can just go ahead and see like this iPhone 8 Plus, the person had listed it for $310 about as a buy it now, and it ended on the 23rd of February, but essentially it didn't sell. And like I was mentioning, a lot of times stuff on eBay is going to be overpriced, and it'll be a lot of like big businesses essentially selling phones for essentially a price that you aren't going to make any money in turn. And so you can just kind of go through and see what items were listed and ultimately were not bought. And then if you want to just go tailor even specifically further down, you can click sold items, and these are the items that sold and the prices that they sold for, and ultimately that's very useful as well. You can kind of see like a pattern, and these are I would say relatively higher prices than what I'm used to. I would say these are closer to retail prices instead of prices that you should be buying to resell a phone at. But again, ultimately that depends on your market. So kind of going through on the auction side of things, again, you can kind of go through and see, the one very big and important thing on eBay is just to make sure you look through and read, the description. Looking at this phone, it says please read the description for exact details about issues. And again, it has issues with home button, the fingerprint reader, and but it's unlocked. The downside with iPhone 8s having home button issues is you are essentially stuck with, you're permanently going to essentially lose Touch ID if you do the repair anywhere outside of Apple, and obviously it's not going to be feasible to do the repair at Apple. So you essentially are going to have to work on getting a new home button on this device. And oh, this is an iPhone 7 actually, not even an iPhone 8, but again, you're going to have to essentially not, you're going to have to, once the phone is repaired, it won't have Touch ID. But again, that's, you can just kind of look through and see what the general consensus on specific prices are, and see, what stuff's going for and what's, stuff is worth. And, that's how you can start to ultimately find phones on eBay. Now, again, I know I really mentioned that eBay isn't my cup of tea, and I've never really had the ultimate success, with eBay. Then kind of moving forward to what I really enjoyed. When I started out myself, I was all over like classified sites. In the U.S., there's Craigslist. In Canada, there is Kijiji, and essentially, just scouring those classified sites, refreshing every 15-20 minutes, trying to find deals. New York Craigslist. Now we'll hop into Craigslist and take a quick peek. Now I'll kind of discuss though. This is Craigslist, and these type of classified sites are where I initially started off of myself, and ultimately like now I've transitioned away. Since Craigslist and these type of sites usually aren't the most active anymore with private sellers, and that's ultimately who you want to be buying off of, not businesses, because businesses are essentially pricing their items again at retail price, not at a price where you can afford to buy it and make money off of, right? And so even when you go through and click on any of these listings, like usually you're able to kind of go through and tell that it's a it's a reseller that's selling the device, and even just looking at the top three, you can see it's the same style of photo. More likely than not, it's a reseller selling the phone, and they're selling it at a price where if you bought this for $450, like I don't see how you can, at least in this area, sell it for more than that, right? So that's always the issue of Craigslist. Now, kind of moving forward to what I specifically have usually had like a lot more luck with is sites such as, I guess more related to like the buying and selling apps such as like OfferUp, LetGo. I believe one of those companies bought the other, so I think that's turned into one app. Now with that, you are going to see a lot of scams. Essentially, if anyone is wanting you to send them money like electronically, like via Cash App, Venmo, any type of deal, and then they say that they're going to ship you the phone, that's very clearly, going to be a scam. You're not going to ever get the phone. Also, conversely, when you're selling, if someone wants you to ship the phone type thing, more likely than not, it's going to be a scam. So you have to really like kind of play on those or practice, sniffing out scams and that type of thing. You really want to try to meet people in person, give them cash, that type of thing. And, that kind of brings me over to the current, bread and butter of, what I think currently the best platform to source on. And that would, for me, be Facebook Marketplace. And again, this is something that's going to depend on your area, really. It's, whatever, people, whatever is, a popular platform in your area. So, for me, Facebook Marketplace is a very popular platform, and I think Facebook offers a very like distinct advantage. I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but ultimately, your ideal seller is going to be a private seller that's selling their phone because they're upgrading or switching to a different phone, and they just want to get rid of the current phone that they have, and that's essentially your ideal person that you want to be buying phones off of, right? And those type of people are usually on Facebook, and that's like a personal social network for them, right? And so it seems only logical for them to go ahead and list their phone on there. It's within the same app that they usually use for social media consumption, and so that's where you're gonna find. I personally think right now, like the highest concentration of like personal sellers that are just taking pictures of their phone and trying to sell their phone just on the side because they don't need it anymore. And so that's really what I've had the most success with. And the one downside of Facebook Marketplace is it's kind of I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it, but I guess I'll just say it's not the best platform for like searching and like filtering specific things. It's essentially like when you'll first start out with Marketplace, it'll be a broad spectrum of items it'll show you, and eventually once you start like searching specific things, like searching for iPhones and then messaging people that are selling iPhones, or messaging people that are selling cell phones in general, that's when Facebook will start kind of curating your feed and specifically start showing you devices that it'll think that you're interested in. And that's kind of when I feel like it becomes the easiest to reach out to people. And so a lot of times you'll see someone just list a phone, and Facebook will hopefully put it at the top of your feed in Facebook Marketplace, and you can go ahead and message them right when they list the phone. And ultimately, the Facebook has a generic message of like, hey, so-and-so, is this device still available? A personal thing that I've really liked to do is instead, like I would remove that message, and I just usually have this copied to my clipboard. I will then replace that like message with the same type of message, but like essentially just paste in like a version I wrote myself, and I'll just say, hey, like I'm very interested in this cell phone. Can you please let me know if you still have the device, so we can set up a time to meet. And that way, usually people when they post something will get like bombarded with the same message of, hey, is this available? Hey, is this available? But then you essentially are setting yourself apart a little bit, where you're not using that standard Facebook message, but instead you're using your own. You're asking the same question essentially type thing. You're just kind of trying to initiate a conversation, but I feel like when you send your own message like that, it kind of sets you apart and makes you seem a little bit more interested in the actual like listing itself, and it makes people, I guess, especially when they have multiple people messaging them at once, it makes them want to reply to you, I feel like, a little bit more. That's just some personal success I've had with it. That might not be the case for you. It's definitely something to try out, right? It's it takes a couple extra seconds, and if it can even secure you an extra, like 1 or 2 extra phone deals every few months, I'd say it's worth it's time well spent. But that's kind of one thing that I do. And essentially what I like to do is kind of get like a gauge on someone's situation. Usually I'll ask like, and the thing is, you don't want to ask too many questions. People are really just trying to easily sell their phone type thing, and they're going to ultimately sell to the buyer that gives them the least amount of friction. So if there's someone that's asking them a million different questions versus someone that's like, oh, can we meet right now? They obviously want to sell to the person that wants to meet right now, and that might even mean that they're willing to do a cheaper price if that means that they don't have to go through the headache of answering all million questions that you have. So you want to really try to like limit what you're going to ask. The one thing I personally like to do on Facebook is kind of click that person's profile and try to get a bit of a read on them. And when you click their profile, usually you'll see the other types of things that they're selling. If they're selling other cell phones, and they're obviously like, it seems like they're a reseller as well, that'll be my quick thing of not wanting to move any forward with that, since, I'm most likely going to be in a situation where I'm not going to be able to get the phone at a price where I can make a profit on it. If, it's someone that's selling just other housewares or, not selling really anything else at all, that's something that'll tell me that, hey, this is a deal that I can ultimately, try to pursue and see if I can get a good price on. Now, my kind of go-to phrase after that is I'll, if the ads are not too descriptive, just ask like, are there any issues with the phone? And I'll try to put this all in the same message, and then ask, what carrier the phone is with if they didn't mention it. And usually then, they'll be able to respond back with, whatever information that you need. And with that, you can end up essentially having a mental price or mental idea of what that phone is worth. And again, like I was mentioning before, you want to try to make like a 15 to 20% profit on your first few deals, right? And so you can go ahead and let's say, offer them a price where you would be essentially making 25% on the phone. And that's, just to give yourself a little bit of breathing room of when they want to get back to you with a different offer. So, essentially, let's say, you're looking at a specific phone, they have it listed for 150. That you can sell that phone for like 125, 130 maybe. You want to maybe give them an offer at 100, and that way if they come back with something a little bit higher, you still have like that breathing room of like you can afford to play with them a little bit essentially on the price without risk of losing out on the deal. And that's mainly just like kind of the art of negotiation. You want to be prepared for whatever they're gonna throw back at you. And now a lot of times you might not even want to negotiate over messages if it's something where you aren't too far off on price, or it's something that's priced very reasonably already. I would say that you want to set up a meeting right away. And reason behind that is, again, if something's priced very reasonably, there's going to be a lot of people that want to buy that phone. And even if you want to negotiate a little bit further, I would say just straight up be ready to say, hey, like, okay, I'm very serious, like I have cash, can we meet up? That's when you get to the point of just setting up a meetup. And I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but when you're meeting up with people, I think the utmost important thing is safety. So at the end of the day, you don't want to be in a situation where you're going to be getting, there's the potential for you to get harmed, or potential for you to get robbed, right? That's essentially one of the worst things that can happen in this business, I would say. And so because of that, you want to always kind of keep safety in mind when you are making the decision of like setting up a specific place to meet. Again, when you're looking through someone's profile, you can almost get a bit of a read on the type of person, and kind of then establish I guess the level of I guess maybe like trust going into it. Now, this isn't like a surefire way. Obviously, people, there's a lot of people that are selling items on hacked Facebook profiles. or just have fake pictures and stuff like that uploaded. But for me, like personally, and again, this just anecdotally, people that have information like their job information listed on their Facebook profile, information about the rest of their family, like that kind of stuff. Those are the type of people that most likely aren't going to be the people that are going to put you in a dangerous situation when you're meeting up with them. And so that way you might have like a little bit more leniency of where you might be willing to meet them. Now let's say again there's something that is letting you know that you definitely want to like kind of preserve your safety in a situation. I would personally say like the safest place to first of all meet up is inside of a police station. Nowadays, a lot of police stations have specific areas where you can actually meet people to do deals like this. You can always just call your local police station and say, hey, I'm meeting a person off of Facebook to buy a phone off them. Can I just do it in your guys' lobby just to make sure we both stay safe and everything of that sort? And a lot of police stations are happy to do that. My personal go-to, and this is usually because I'm a lot of times maybe meeting people after hours when the lobby of a lot of police stations have closed. My personal go-to is I will tell people that like I want to meet inside of a like gas station, usually like a bigger gas station or like a bigger convenience store, like something like a 7-Eleven, if you guys are familiar with it. Essentially like a big chain convenience store for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a very well lit area at all times of the day. Usually they're open 24 hours a day. And it's usually easier for me to get people to greet because what I'll like usually say, my kind of line that I usually use is, hey, can we meet at so and so convenience store because they have an ATM. I need to pull up cash. And obviously like people want to get the cash, so they're going to be willing to more likely go out of their way to meet you somewhere that'll have an ATM. And that kind of gives you an extra layer of protection of the person doesn't think that you have the money on them, even if they had poor intentions of wanting to rob you for the money. They'll have the idea that, oh, this person's going to need to first inspect the phone, then they're going to pull the money out of the ATM and give it to me, so I can't really rob them. And even if you already have the cash with you, that's something that I'll usually say still, just so I know that I want the person to at least have the idea that I don't have the money with me. But again, when you're meeting in a place like a 7-Eleven, it's again very well lit. There are cameras everywhere. There will more than likely be at least the store clerk there, and if not other people. So I'd say that's usually a top place for me to meet people and maintain my level of safety essentially. And with that, thankfully I've really like only ever had one single bad encounter. And with that, it was just someone who, it was a group of two people, I guess, and it wasn't a violent encounter. Thankfully, and essentially, one person just essentially was inspecting a phone that I was selling, and they decided to just sprint off while the other person kind of held on to me, kind of to prevent me from, I guess, going and following the other person, and then that person ultimately ran away. And I could have made the decision of chasing after or trying to hold on to the other person that was preventing me from following the person who initially ran off with the phone. But again, I didn't want to escalate things. It was a $400 or $500 phone. It's not worth something putting myself at risk for. So and that's something where I met someone in their apartment building actually, and I guess it wasn't their apartment building. It was just the lobby of, I guess, a random apartment building that they found, and it was well lit. There were a lot of cameras and stuff, but ultimately, that was a poor decision on my part, and just also some bad luck I had. And but other than that, and again, going back to what I talked about in the very beginning of the video, everything that happens, you can take it as a learning experience, and ultimately, I did, I after that became, you know, a lot more hesitant and a lot more, you know, I would think a lot more critically when I would essentially essentially approach, you know, situations. I would try to always like play through, you know, different scenarios and make sure, you know, I was in the safest position that I could be then, you know, in future, you know, meeting up with deals. Even now, you know, and this happened many years ago, and you know, even now, that's something I still remember, and you know, the tactics that I personally kind of learned from that, I still stick with. So you know, I endured a few $100 loss, and you know, thankfully after that, it's never happened again. So you know, and so again, like I was mentioning, you know, kind of maintaining safety when you're doing these deals is going to be, you know, your best friend. So sorry, and enough off of that tangent again. Um, Kind of moving forward to, you know, when you've actually met the person and you're inspecting the device. Obviously, you want to, you know, check the physical condition of the device. You know, make sure, you know, the way it was described, you know, with any scratches, you know, anything that essentially impacts the physical condition of the phone. You know, you essentially reflect that in the offer of like what you're paying for the phone. You know, once you've looked over it physically, you want to make sure functionality-wise everything works. The one thing I check on modern iPhones, and I guess as well as talking about past iPhones, is the one thing that you want to really kind of check is Face ID on newer iPhones that have it, or Touch ID on older iPhones. And the reason being is essentially, you know, if you buy a phone that has something broken at the end of the day, you can have it repaired or have it fixed for a relatively like decent price, except for issues with Touch ID or Face ID. And moving, you know, forward now, and the reason is, you know, usually you can't just swap parts into the phone, you know, like you can with, you know, a screen, for example, or a battery. The only people that can reprogram essentially, you know, those sensors, that, you know, if Face ID, for example, is not working, the only people that can reprogram those sensors are going to be Apple. And you know, thankfully now, you know, eBay and, you know, different phone stores as well are starting to offer different, you know, types of repair for Face ID based on, you know, if different issues. But personally, I just don't like to mess with Face ID or Touch ID issues at all unless you know, the price is heavily reflecting you know, what I'm buying. So that's usually like the first thing I'll check, and then I'll kind of go through, check other things like the cameras, speakers, make sure the screen is sensitivity everywhere, and, you know, checking battery health. You also want to make sure you're checking for any types of like locks on the device, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in just a second. But you can always, you know, check any types of like MDM locks. You know, if something's locked to someone's Google account, if they have, you know, an Android phone that you're buying, or someone's, you know, iCloud account is still on the phone from an iPhone that you're buying, you know, you want to make sure that that's something that you essentially address and make sure that they take off, because if those types of locks are on the phones, it ultimately can become very hard, if not impossible, to get them off, you know, without the proper owner of the phone helping you out with that. So you want to make sure that you 100% address it, and then essentially moving forward from that, you want to go ahead and check the IMEI of the phone, and the IMEI is essentially my apologies, everyone. My recording just essentially stopped or died. Kind of continuing back off of everything. The IMEI number of a phone is essentially like the identification number for the phone, and that's going to tell you, you know, essentially all the information that you want to know about the phone. So the one website that I use that I find, you know, extremely helpful is sicw.com, and you know, this website does have like a few free services that you can, you know, as long as you're not logged in, you can use, I think, up to like 5 times a day for free. And personally, I would, you know, go ahead and just throw a bit of money and just deposit it in. You know, usually they, depending on what method you're using, you know, they have like different limits on, you know, the lowest amount you can put in. You know, I would say, you know, just, you know, throw in 15, 20 bucks, you know, whatever the amount is, and that'll last you forever. You know, well, not forever, but it'll last you for a while, since you pay per check. And the majority of the checks that you're going to want to run are going to be extremely like cheap. Kind of like looking at the basic stuff that you are going to be most likely wanting to check, you know, when you are essentially buying a phone, and let's kind of focus on iPhones for a second. The big check that I like to focus on usually is the 10-cent Apple Basic Info check. That check really gives you all of the basic information that you really need to know. Clicking on like the sample, and with all the checks, you can just click. You can select a check and click sample to see what information it'll give you. It tells you the model, the IMEI that you're going to enter in. Usually if there's an eSIM on the phone, it gives you the second IMEI, serial number. It tells you the iCloud lock status. So for example, this phone, the iCloud lock is on, and then it'll tell you the iCloud status as like clean or like lost/stolen. Essentially, clean means that the person has their iCloud on the phone, but they haven't reported it stolen on the iCloud website. But once, like, let's say someone loses their phone, they'll go on iCloud and report it, lost, and that's when you'll see this as like lost/stolen. It'll also show you when the phone was purchased, as well as like the coverage status. Now this sample doesn't show everything, but I feel like usually when I run the Apple Basic Info check, I get a lot more information. So this was one check I ran on a phone that I was actually like interested in looking at, and again, we'll kind of go through and look through this report. So this was an 11 Pro in midnight green. It was on Verizon. You can tell, with the VER, that's, the Verizon carrier that I was bought from. And looking below that, you see carrier as Verizon USA as well. But, the SIM lock status on this phone was unlocked. So, the phone ultimately got unlocked. This was the IMEI of the phone, serial, all the information that we discussed. iCloud lock was off. That was the one thing I was looking at. But the big thing that ultimately prevented me from ultimately wanting to buy this phone was the fact that the phone was reported lost or stolen, and that immediately was that immediately was a factor why I didn't buy the phone. When the phone is reported when the phone is blacklisted essentially and reported lost or stolen, you aren't going to be able to use the phone anywhere in North America, and you're opening yourself up to a lot of like legal liability, buying a phone like that. So you definitely want to stay away from that. Again, the same phone I ran a few different checks on. I checked essentially the blacklist status. I believe that was there's the GSMA Worldwide Blacklist Status Pro. That one, I ran on the phone. Again, I just wanted to confirm that Verizon Wireless blacklisted the phone on this date. And this was mainly the seller was trying to play dumb a little and say, oh, I don't know why the phone's showing that, and so I was showing them that this is the date that it was blacklisted on, and maybe they were not playing dumb and they actually didn't know that the phone was blacklisted, but I mean, they told me they were the original purchaser of the phone, and there wouldn't have been anyone else that really would have reported it lost or stolen. And then again, another thing with this phone was that the phone also, I checked the actual status of the phone on Verizon as well using this checker, I believe, and the phone also was, the device had a pending loan payment, so it was also a financed phone. So this was kind of the perfect storm of exactly what you don't want to buy. This phone was definitely all over the place. But again, these are some important statuses that you want to look at, and I think I might make a follow-up video with a lot of these statuses. I'm gonna just look at the clock really quickly. We are coming up on time, so I'm just gonna kind of get through this, and then one more thing, and then maybe I'll break this up into two parts. But again, one thing that you really want to keep track of again is, you don't want to buy something that's reported lost or stolen. When you put a SIM card into that phone anywhere in North America, even though the phone's unlocked, it's going to show as no service. Essentially, the phone's not going to work. No one is really going to want to buy the phone unless it's for parts, I guess, or to sell outside of the U.S. or outside of North America. And again, you're opening yourself up to liability by purchasing a device that's essentially not the most. I guess you're not promoting the most ethical or legal business practices by ultimately buying this phone, even if you get an amazing deal on it and can make a lot of money just parting it out type thing. It's you're opening yourself up to unnecessary liability that in my opinion isn't really worth it. So again, you want to make sure it's not reported lost or stolen. you want to, and then the other thing you want to make sure is that that the phone isn't like financed. So like, let's say usually what I personally will do is run the Apple Basic check, find the carrier. Even if the phone is SIM unlocked, I will go take that particular carrier and check the actual thing of I'll check the actual carrier. As long as it's Sprint, T-Mobile, or Verizon, I'll usually go and check if the phone has been paid off at least, so that way it won't get blacklisted in the future, from the phone not being paid off. If the phone's on AT&T, what I can just do is usually I'll Google AT&T device unlock, go to the device unlock portal. So if the device is already unlocked, that means it's already paid off. If it's not unlocked, then I'll click unlock your device. Select I don't have a mobile number. It'll ask for the IMEI. I'll put the IMEI in here, do the I'm not a robot, and if the phone has a loan payment on it or if it's still financed, it'll give you a message here saying that the device can't be unlocked because there's a balance due on it, and that's when I'll know the phone is financed. I don't want to essentially buy that phone. So that's kind of a brief overview of things to do when you're inspecting the phone. And again, I will make another video and try to go more in depth on specific SICW, statuses, like different blacklist statuses, what different, iCloud statuses might mean, benefits of, different, specific model numbers of phones or differences within specific model numbers of phones. This video is already getting pretty lengthy, and I am going to be probably breaking it up into 2 parts, but I will definitely, I try to make a separate video on, kind of SICW on its own. Now, let's say, you've essentially secured a phone that you are interested in, you've inspected the phone. The other thing that you want to really look into is the pricing on the phone and ultimately appraising, what the phone is worth. You might be doing this beforehand, or you might be doing this when you're meeting the person, and based off of specific things that you notice, you want to offer a specific price and you want to really appraise it. And the way that you can do that is, depending on where you want to sell the phone at. Let's say you want to sell the phone on eBay, which personally I wouldn't recommend, and we'll go more in depth onto that later. But, let's say you want to sell the phone on eBay, we can go back and use the sold item, filter that I was showing you guys earlier, and see kind of what phones, in a similar condition, the same type of phone, what they sell for, and you can then go ahead and figure out the price you want to buy the phone at. Let's say you want to go to sell the phone locally. Again, you can kind of, and you'll eventually get a feel for this once you buy and sell a lot. But you can just go on Facebook and see what these similar phones are selling for, and maybe if this phone is underpriced a little bit, just see if you can make a bit of a margin and just buy it locally and resell it locally. And usually that's the quickest thing, that's the safest thing, to just easily turn around and get cash. Now, another very quick option to move phones in volume is to sell to a direct buyer. And there are a variety of direct buyers, kind of all over the place, and they're, they offer like different benefits, different prices and stuff like that. One very big direct buyer is Atlas Mobile, and so these direct buyers usually have price sheets, and you can just Google, for example, I Googled Atlas Mobile price sheet, and it gives you essentially all the information that you need to know. You can find out, an iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Pro, 128 gigabytes unlocked. If it's swapped, now swap means, it just got swapped from, and it's a warranty swap from Apple essentially. So it's still wrapped in the plastic. You get the swap price. You have grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D, and dead on arrival. And, if you usually look a little bit under that, you'll see, if it's cracked back, they want to take off $100, cracked lens, 60, bad Face ID. We were discussing Face ID earlier, but, they say ask, and that's because they, it really degrades the value of the phone. And then again, heavy scratching, extra deduction, or grade C, like, you can always essentially be able to see the kind of condition the phone is in, and, then appraise it very easily, off of that. Again, another thing that we were talking about a little earlier, they say, we don't accept stolen, fraudulent items. All items must be obtained legally. All these items are going to be returned at the seller's expense. Again, really kind of focusing on the fact that you want to check IMEIs. You want to make sure you aren't buying anything that, is going to put you at risk of any negative circumstances. Kind of going deeper into the grading, usually these price sheets will have a tab for grading, and you know, you can kind of scroll down. Okay, grade A means like new mint. Grade B is OEM, so you know, original screen, stuff like that. Grade C is crack glass, stuff like that. And you kind of like look through and look at all essentially look through and see all of the different, you know, grading measures, as well as important information like the contact for, you know, the people that are part of the direct, you know, the direct buyer's contact, you know, where you can sell PayPal invoices to, and some more information. And you know, there are a variety of different there's a variety of different, you know, direct buyers. You know, Atlas Mobile is, you know, just the one I thought of offhand to show for this video, but you know, you can really go through the Google Sheet and look through all the information. They lay everything else out, as well as like things like payment options, where you know, they can pay you by PayPal invoice before you send the phone, and obviously if the phone is not as described, they expect you to work with them on that. Or you know, the reason they're going through PayPal is because, again, they have the protection through PayPal. Or you know, you can just send the phone to them, you know, up front, and then they can, you know, usually with also the PayPal invoice, you're paying the 3% PayPal fee, whereas with upfront you can you know, get money through PayPal Gift or like Cash App, Venmo, you know, stuff where you can avoid specific fees. So, you know, there's definitely benefits for both options. You know, invoice is better maybe if you are having cash flow issues. You want to make sure you can get cash as quick as possible. You know, you can definitely go that route. And again, so, you know, you can kind of go through the bottom, look through all these different devices, and be able to then, you know, go ahead and appraise essentially what you're buying, and get an idea, and go based off of that. Like, let's say, you know, you want to either sell locally, but, you know, have Atlas or have a direct buyer as a safety net. Again, you know, you can always just have an idea of these prices. Now, these prices do fluctuate very, very often. And so you want to make sure you're always keeping on top of these sheets and, you know, locking in prices. You know, they'll always like list things like, for example, prices for items. These are the prices that are for items that are delivered by this date. You know, if the phone arrives late, it's going to be subject to next week pricing, and the pricing might stay the same. The price might drop, and or rarely the price might go up. And you know, that's kind of the, you know, the thing of dealing with direct buyers. You know, again, you know, like I was mentioning, there can be different options or different benefits that different direct buyers offer. Like Atlas has the look of your free FedEx label for 5 devices. But again, you know, if they want to make deductions or returns, they, you know, that's up to them essentially. So that's kind of a brief overview on, you know, different direct buyers. And you know, direct buyers have the benefit of they make it very easy to sell phones, and you know, you can move a lot of phones quickly through them. You don't have to wait for stuff that's sitting around. You can you know, buy something, ship it out to Atlas, you know, the same night type thing, and you know, ultimately get paid very quickly. So you know, there's definitely, you know, something to be said with that. And now, you know, this is like a very natural point to transition into you know, the actual like physical like selling process. So kind of at this point, you know, we've talked about how you're going to be securing the deal, you know, how to, you know, how you're going to find the deal, you know, what platform you can find it off of, how to inspect it, how to ultimately appraise it, and at that point, you know, that's when you can consider the transaction as you know, being complete. And you know, now you're at the point where you have the phone in your possession, and you want to explore, you know, different options for actually selling the phone. And I'm thinking about actually breaking this up into a second part of the video. You know what? Actually, let's kind of touch a little bit about it, and you know, then on the second part of the video, we'll have a few more like advanced things that we can discuss. Now, I guess, you know, the way that you're going to yield the most money, I would say, for devices that you're looking to sell is usually by selling locally. When you're selling locally, you know, you don't have any issues of you know, there's a lot less or a lot lower risk of you getting scammed, or people claiming that they didn't receive something, or they received something that wasn't the same, things of that nature, or damages, or something getting lost in shipping, that type of thing. That can severely be limited when you're meeting someone. They inspect the phone in front of you, they hand you the cash, the deal is done. So you are under a lot of risk, or a lot less risk, and ultimately you can make a lot more money by selling the phone for a retail price to a retail customer that's looking to buy the phone for themselves. And a lot of times that is an awesome option for if you have time to wait and sit on devices for a while. And again, the biggest downside for that is you can't move quantity very quickly, and it's dependent on your market and dependent on your ultimate margins that you're trying to achieve. But it gets hard to push a high level of quantity out when you're ultimately selling locally. And the other issue of selling locally is you essentially, it takes time to go ahead and go ahead and meet people. There's always still the risk of people wanting to rob you and things of that nature. So that's another negative. Going back to the ability to make a little bit more money when you're selling locally as well, that can also be attributed to the fact that there's no fees when you're selling locally. Really, when you list on Facebook Marketplace, you are posting your ad up for free essentially, and when someone responds to your ad, it doesn't cost them any money, it doesn't cost you any money. It's just a peer-to-peer transaction. You guys can go meet up. There's no as long as you guys are exchanging money through cash, usually there isn't any fee that you're going to endure by accepting payment from them. So that can really cut into when you're when you're trying to make small profit margins. Even the 3% PayPal fee when you're doing an invoice and selling to Atlas. That can add up. Or when you're selling on eBay, for example, and you have eBay. I haven't sold on eBay for a while, but I think they have a crazy 10% final value fee, and then PayPal also has their own fee. I think eBay recently switched their payment system, so they just have the payments are run through eBay as well. So there's just a single amalgamated fee that kind of runs through. But again, it's a ridiculous fee. There's also other online marketplaces like Swappa, stuff like that. And, again, those usually have a tiered based fee system instead of a percentage based fee. And still kind of at the end of the day, there are fees, whereas when you're selling peer-to-peer, you have the luxury of avoiding that. So that's definitely a very big benefit to selling. But again, when you're selling, you just want to make sure you practice, the tactics that I mentioned earlier about safety, making sure you're meeting people in a safe location, and ultimately making sure that your safety is, the top priority. You don't want to ultimately get robbed and things of that nature. I'm trying to think, and we discussed, selling to direct buyers as well. We discussed selling online, and really, the selling process, I guess, is one of the, it's essentially, I would say, the easiest part of flipping, right? People will always say, when you're reselling, or people will always say, in any part of business, you make money when you buy something. And that definitely, sticks true here. If you overpay for a device, it's going to be very hard for you to, turn any type of margin, when you're selling a device, or if you, buy a phone where, there were issues that you didn't know were, issues when you bought the phone, and then you have to pay to get those repaired. It's going to be very hard for you to turn a profit. So when you are buying the phone, that's when you're essentially there to make the money. So you have to make sure you are ultimately sourcing items at the right price, because then no matter what essentially happens, you will be in a position where you can no matter what turn a profit. So I would say the hardest part of the process is buying, vetting deals, inspecting phones, appraising it, and kind of going with that. And once you go through, get all that set up, that's when you're going to be able to then be very comfortable and easily make money. And once you then ultimately get over the hurdle of being able to inspect phones very quickly, to the point where it's very second nature, that type of thing. That's ultimately when I would say you're going to start making money. And the selling part, is it'll come naturally, and it will ultimately be like one of the easier parts. And so yeah, like I mentioned, I'm going to kind of discuss some more of the advanced tactics, such as how you can leverage things like Facebook ads and running like Craigslist ads and stuff for sourcing and things of that nature. I'm going to then, I think, go ahead and separate that up into a second video, but because I do know that this already is running pretty long. But if this was helpful, please leave a thumbs up down below or subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions at all, you can go ahead and just go down below and leave a comment. I will try my best to answer. I simply here just I know this wasn't the most organized video, but I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to essentially trying to clickbait you or anything. I just want to kind of just have like almost a simple conversation where you guys can understand my experience in the business and ultimately how you can leverage my experience to make money on your own. So again, if you have any questions, I'm going to try my best to help, and just leave a comment down below. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one.